Hello and welcome back to the MLB DFS slate breakdown for July 8th, Monday. We are here. We're going to be breaking it down. We got 5 games to go over, and I think it's a pretty interesting slate. We do have some choices to make with pitchers and a lot of stacks to like today. So let's get into it. But before we do, remember, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to everything we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all, one low price, or you can go with our super duper value deal of the $240 yearly, which is only $20 a month. So you get a giant discount. It is literally half off to just pay for the year. That's the way I would go. 100%. I got to use these tools. So why not, if I'm going to use them, pay for the cheap way to do it. Now, let's get into it. We will start off by going over the perfect lineups on FanDuel. Then we'll go to DraftKings. Then we will go to today's starting pitchers. And lastly, the stacks to consider. Let's get into it. So, perfect lineup. We got Tariq Skubal, 67. He went absolute nuts. And then we have a 2-man Ranger stack, 2-man Braves, and one-offs. And then on to FanDuel. The winning lineup went to Jay Kukak, who won $20K with 246.2. He had a 3-man Braves, 2-man Seattle, and then a couple one-offs there and got it done. I unfortunately missed the big payday, but I did get 4th with 227.8. I had Skubal. I had a one-off with Wilson Contreras. Then I had a 3-man Texas stack and a 4-man Miami. My issue, Sema didn't quite get there. Chisenholm and Sanchez also didn't quite get there. So I had 3 guys with under 10 points. Just hard to win when that is the case. But all in all, I'm happy with it. I live to fight another day. And let's check out DraftKings. And on to DK. So we got Ronaldo Lopez, Tariq Skubal, 3-man Rangers, 2-man Braves, and then some one-offs. And the winning lineups went to Firedog 50 and Scott 12E12, who both had Evaldi, Skubal, 3-man St. Louis, 5-man ATL that got it done for the win. They both won $35K. Congrats to them. Let's get over to today. So, starting with high-owned pitchers. Our highest owned pitcher is Andrew Abbott at 31% owned, with John Gray right there at 31 as well. Now, honestly, I think Chris Sale ends up being the highest owned pitcher. We have him at 2.4x. Consensus has him at 4 points more than anybody else today. So I think most likely he ends up being the highest owned guy, and for good reason, with a 4.5-star alert score. He's obviously the best pitcher on the slate with a 2.6 FIP, 1.7 over the last 5, giant K rate, huge upside in this matchup for him. But Arizona has been hitting lefties well. They've been decent against them all year, but lately, 325 average. Only a 130 ISO, but 360 WOBA, striking out at 22%. I'm interested in Chris Sale for sure. 30% combined K rate. There's a little bit of a worry, though, that the Diamondbacks have been hitting well, and they can very much hit well again today. So that, I think, should be the most highest owned. But then let's check out Andrew Abbott here. So he's a lefty going against the Rockies, who have actually been hitting lefties very, very well lately. 259 average, 222 ISO, 330 WOBA. So they've been doing very well versus these lefties. And I hate to say it, I kind of like some of those Colorado stacks that should be low owned and should have some leverage for you. Then Abbott allowing 53% fly balls, a lot of barrel balls, high average exit velocity. Not allowing a ton of hard contact, but hey, it is very warm in Cincinnati, and it is the Great American Small Park, so I would expect him giving up a home run or two. The one thing, though, is he does have some strikeouts in his favor with a 32.5% K rate versus lefties, which is just absolutely insane. I do have to say, though, that lately it's been 25.5, so much lower than that. I mean, we have him at a 22% combined K rate, so nowhere near that 32. So I do think upside might be a little limited in this spot, but there's bad pitching on the slate, so I don't think you can take anybody out of your player pool today, especially not one of the better pitchers on the slate. ERA-wise, he does have a decent ERA at 3.28, but those FIPs are a little scary, and I think some regression is probably coming his way. Next, Jon Gray. My big-time worry about him is just pitch count. Look, he's averaging 68 pitches over his last 20 starts and over his last 5. Earlier this season, he was getting into the high 90s, but he got hurt, and then since then has barely been throwing pitches. 72, 73, and 77 over his last 4. I expect him still be limited, and that's my big issue here. Over his last 5 starts, only 11% K rate, 36% hard contact, 43% fly balls versus this Angels offense who, yeah, they're not great, but at least they hit the ball hard, and I think they can definitely do that today versus Jon Gray. And behind Jon Gray is a bad bullpen, so I kind of like the Angels stack as a little bit of a leverage spot. Also, I don't mind Jon Gray. I just big time worry about the upside. The only time outside of this one start versus the Royals that he's got 20 plus has been when he's been going 90 plus pitches. He's just not going to get there today. He's likely in the mid 80s as a max, in my opinion. And so for that reason and high owned, I don't know if I can really get there. Next, we got Gavin Williams. He's another guy that's likely to have a little bit of a pitch count. Went 74 pitches last time out. He's a decent pitcher. He's in a good spot versus the Tigers, so I can see it if you want to go there on this bad pitching slate. But I do worry about upside with the pitch count here as well. And I think there's some other places to go. Next, we got Chris Paddack. Paddack versus the White Sox. It's a great spot. The worry with Paddack, he last started June 21st, then went on the IL. He is back now, but we don't know how many pitches he's going to do. I don't think he did not make a minor league rehab assignment. So he's coming back without pitching in a couple weeks. Are they going to give him the full leash where, he can go 80 plus pitches, or are they going to limit him a little bit? That is the big worry. And I don't really know what to make of it, but I love the spot with Chris Paddack. It has only been 2 weeks, but it was an arm injury. So really hard to know how much leash Chris Paddack is going to have. If he has his full leash, I think he's in a great spot today. Next, we got Yolber Diaz. He is a righty and in an interesting spot here versus Atlanta because he has a 12.6 K per 9 rate in the minors. Now, his ERA, high 3s, mid 4 or low 4s, depending on if he was in AA or AAA this season. So there is some upside in this spot, and he's going under-owned at 6 and only 6K. So for that reason, I do have some interest in him, but it's a tough matchup versus the Braves. However, they've been struggling versus righties lately. 214 average, 164 ISO, 232 WOBA. I can definitely see Yolber getting there today, so I'm going to have a little bit of him. Next, Davis Daniel, 8K, 1.9X. Very interested in Daniel. I love the Rangers in this matchup too, though, so I might have a little bit of both. But we have him at 1.9X. The Rangers have been a very good offense lately, so I don't mind taking some Davis Daniel, but that offense is not one you really want to mess with when it does seem like they're heating up. 258 versus righties lately, 144 WOBA, 320 WOBA, or 144 ISO, 320 WOBA. And I think this over the last 20 games is going to be creeping up fairly quickly just because they've been hitting the ball well recently. Daniels, I like his ownership. Not totally in love with his spot, as I'm not really in love with anybody's spot. Only reason to talk about Montero is that he's 4K and put up 17 last time. I don't think he's very good. He's in a very tough spot right here versus Cleveland, but he's super cheap. So for that reason alone, I think there's some reason. I think there is a chance that you have Chris Sale and then everybody else in the mid-teens. So if Montero can get you 10 or so, it's kind of interesting to pair him with Sale. Gives you a ton of room for bats still. Next, Ryan Feltner. I think Feltner is one of my favorite low-owned plays. I would say Gilbert Diaz and Feltner are the two. Feltner gives you big-time leverage. Cincinnati is going to be high-owned. He has a 3.7 FIP over his last 5, 22% K rate. Now, he's allowing way too many stolen bases. And for this reason, you need to consider Cincinnati because they love to run. But he's been decent lately. And there's upside in facing Cincinnati. 25.5% K rate, only a 302 WOBA. They hit the ball hard with a 170 ISO, but all in all, they're not a terrible matchup versus pitchers, and Feltner's averaging 77% more fantasy points away. So I'm interested in. Now, it's not a very high confidence play. We have him at a 1.5x, but we see games where he gets to 20 plus and he's at 5,500. This is a bad pitching slate for everybody but Chris Sale. So I think you can go to a guy with a 23% combined K rate at 5.5 today and roll the dice, get some leverage versus Cincinnati, and hope for the best. Now let's get over to good old FanDuel. Highest owned pitchers on FanDuel is Chris Sale, 36% owned, and then Andrew Abbott. I do think Sale ends up around 50-ish in this slate. He is just clearly the best option. I mean, we have him like 14 points higher projected than anybody else. Consensus has him at 6 points higher than anybody else. It's going to be hard to get away from him on FanDuel. Now, if you do get away from him, if Abbott is the second highest owned pitcher, I don't really love that spot. Or if he is 30% owned like we have him, I really don't like that spot. Gavin Williams, I have worries about upside due to limited pitching. He probably doesn't get that quality start, but he is at least in consideration. Gilbert, he's been going 90-ish pitches in the minors, so no reason he can't get 85-plus pitches today. And there's at least big-time strikeout upside here as the Braves been striking out 27.6 versus righties, 15.2 on the longer range. So I'm a little interested in Gilbert there. Daniel, John Gray, Paddock, all of them, I have worries about the upside, but you can make a case for any of them. And then Feltner at 7.4K is still in play. 90 pitches over his last 5 start average, 22% K rate in a spot where Cincinnati strikes out a lot. I think there is the chance he's able to get a quality start and a win. So for that reason, I got to be a little interested at his price when pitching is so bad. If Chris Sale fails, you're in a spot where there's a ton of pitchers. I mean, not a ton. There's 4 or 5 guys that could fill that role, and none of them really stand out that much between the others. So if you want to roll the dice and hope for a Chris Sale fail, get some leverage, I think Feltner is a little bit interesting, but going to be very, very hard to click that button on FanDuel. On DraftKings, I like it a little bit more. Just on FanDuel, we're going to need a quality start, going to need the win, and Sale just looks way better in that aspect. Now let's get over to DraftKings to take a look at some stacks. And our highest value play, we got Angels versus John Gray. John Gray hasn't been good lately, 6.43 FIP over his last 5, and poor bullpen behind him makes some sense there. Minnesota versus Chris Flexen makes a ton of sense. They are going in kind of high owned, but 2.3x value, some real cheap, nice bats. Brooks Lee has been good. Wallner's a good prospect. Buxton's been on fire. I think you can do a lot worse than that. Detroit versus Gavin Williams. Gavin Williams is a FIP before in his career here in the major leagues, so you can definitely get got. I don't love the spot for the Tigers, but certainly don't hate it. White Sox versus Minnesota. Minnesota at least has a good bullpen. We're not sure how long Paddock is going to go today, but I do prefer Paddock in this matchup versus the White Sox. If he goes, his 80-some pitches that he's allowed, I love the Paddock upside, but I do worry about upside for him. And if that's the case, White Sox make a little interest. Minnesota, we talked about them. We like it. We're going to go to the highest owned. Now, the highest owned is going to be Cincinnati. 124% with the highest owned. Most of them are 110-ish% owned, which is still a lot. Now, Ryan Feltner, 4.22 FIP over his last 20, 3.7 over his last 5. He's been pitching way better lately. It's warm. The ball should fly. It is good hitting weather. Cincinnati makes sense. Feltner allows a lot of stolen bases. He's allowed some home runs. The bullpen behind him is terrible. So I understand why people are going to Cincinnati, but I don't mind some Feltner as leverage, but I will absolutely have some Cincinnati as well today. Now, our highest projected owned, we got Minnesota. We have the Braves. So I talked about Yolber Diaz and how he is in a great spot, but I do got to bring up the fact that, he has a low 4s ERA in AAA. Bring that to the major leagues, and it's likely high 4s, low 5s. Braves can crush that. Braves have been putting together some offensive games lately. I'm a little interested to go with the Brave stack. I like Yolber, but I don't mind Braves. And Minnesota's obvious versus Chris Flexen. And let's get over to the ceiling plays. Highest ceiling, we got Minnesota and Arizona. Got to talk about Arizona in this spot for the sole reason that it is a big-time game theory leverage play. Is it likely to come through? Absolutely not. But if they're showing as one of the higher ceiling matchups at super low ownership versus the pitcher that is the highest owned pitcher, there's just major leverage in that play. So I am going to make sure I have a little bit of Arizona just due to that high ceiling and the super high ownership of Chris Sale, which is likely to come. Now, our highest implied team total is Minnesota at 5. Cincinnati's at 4.9. Cleveland 4.6. Texas at 4.6. Atlanta at 4.5. Those 5 are clearly the best stacks on the day. All of their bullpens aren't very good. Now, I don't mind Colorado, who's at 4.1 versus the chalky Andrew Abbott. I think that one is very interesting. Andrew Abbott allows a lot of fly balls. It's hot out. Can definitely allow some home runs. So definitely a little interested in there. And then I'm also interested in the Angels. John Gray could be a little chalky too. He's allowed a lot of hard contact, a high average exit velocity. There's poor bullpen. I think there's some reason to want to go there. Then you obviously have Arizona as a leverage stack down there as well. So all in all, I think it's a very interesting slate. A lot of different ways to go. A lot of pitchers you can pick on, and picking your pitcher is going to be a little rough today. It's almost close your eyes and just hope. Anyways, guys, you have a good one. Let's win some money, and I'll be back tomorrow. Peace.